beneath a sky draped in the softest gray. The winter breathed its quiet chill across the town, wrapping every corner in a muted hush. Snow fell in slow, deliberate flakes, each one a whispered secret descending from clouds heavy with memory. Elowen moved through this softened world like a shadow stitched from frost, her wheelchair tracing thin, fragile lines in the untouched snow, while Fenric, her steadfast companion, padded beside her with cautious steps, his breath forming fleeting clouds in the cold morning air. The streets were nearly empty, but the town's gaze lingered like a brittle wind against Elowen's skin-sharp, accusing yet strangely distant. Windows framed half-seen faces, eyes averted or narrowed in judgment. Their whispers folded into the silence like a secret song only she seemed to hear. Her presence, quiet as it was, stirred an undercurrent of unease among those who passed, as if her mere existence unsettled the fragile balance they preferred to maintain. Elowen's eyes, a pale shade of storm gray, surveyed the empty storefronts and shuttered homes with a wistful softness. There was a loneliness here, wrapped in the brittle cold, but also an ancient resilience, a patient waiting beneath the frozen surface. Fenric's warm fur brushed against her as he nuzzled her hand, anchoring her in this moment, a silent vow of companionship amid the quiet desolation. Suddenly, the brittle peace shattered. A sharp, cruel laughter echoed from the edge of the street, carrying the unmistakable tones of Isolde and her group, the rich teens, with their polished boots crushing the snow like they did the fragile dignity of those they deemed beneath them. Their shadows stretched long and harsh, their words like icicles thrown without care. "Look who's trying to pass." The broken doll, Isolde sneered, her voice a frostbite chill that cut deeper than the winter air. The others snickered, their eyes flicking to Fenric, tails wagging with a vicious intent. A sudden, sharp kick met Fenric's seat, a cruel punctuation to their unspoken threat. Fenric yelped, stumbling, his legs trembling beneath the blow. Elowen's breath caught, a silent gasp caught in the tight cage of her chest. The snow beneath her wheels blurred as she fought to steady herself, shame and helplessness twisting in her gut like frozen iron. She did not raise her voice. There was no fire in her words, only the steady, aching sorrow of someone who had grown accustomed to being unseen, unheard, but never quite invisible. Her eyes met Isolde's for a brief, tremulous moment. There was something fierce and broken there, like winter's own storm struggling against the coming thaw. But Isolde looked away, smirking, and with a flick of her wrist, the group turned, their laughter trailing like a cold wind as they disappeared down the street. The town's reaction was a symphony of silence. Behind curtained windows, behind doors bolted against the cold, eyes watched and whispered. Gossip slipped like smoke through the cracks of weathered walls, harsh judgments cloaked in concern, pity tangled with disdain. "She shouldn't be out in this weather," some murmured. "It's her own fault," drawing attention. The cruel calculus of exclusion rendered Elowen a ghost in her own home. Her pain, a story whispered but never faced. Night crept in early beneath the gathering clouds, and Elowen's cabin welcomed her like a refuge carved from the cold. Inside, the fire sputtered against the drafty windows, sending warm shadows dancing across the worn wooden floor. The scent of pine smoke mingled with a faint aroma of herbs steeping in a cracked teapot. Fenric settled close, his body warmth a soft pulse against her side. The quiet crackle of the hearth was a lullaby, a fragile thread tying her to the world outside. Her fingers traced the worn edges of a faded photograph, a memory of days when smiles came easier, before the town's whispers grew so loud. The firelight caught in her eyes, drawing out a quiet determination beneath the sorrow. She was not broken. She was surviving. In the stillness, she promised herself small acts of grace. A song hummed softly. A favorite book opened gently, the slow, deliberate drawing of breath to keep the shadows at bay. A shadow fell across the frosted windowpane, and Elowen's gaze lifted. Across the street, a figure stood wrapped in a heavy coat, his stance calm and deliberate against the winter's bite. Galen, the newcomer, whose quiet strength seemed to fold around the edges of the town's harshness like a soft, unyielding snowdrift. His eyes, dark and steady, met hers through the glass, a silent acknowledgement. A fragile bridge stretching between two souls weathering their own storms. There was no grand gesture, no sudden declaration, only the tender ache of connection blossoming in the cold. The winter held its breath as the two figures locked eyes, and in that shared silence, a seed was planted beneath the frozen earth. Elowen looked away, her heart a slow drum beneath the stillness and in the warmth of her cabin. Beneath the soft chorus of falling snow, hope took root. The world outside might still be harsh and unforgiving, but here, in the quiet sanctuary of resilience and whispered promise, a story began to unfold, one not of defeat, but of survival, of the gentle courage it takes to be seen and to see in return. The night deepened, the wind softened, and Fenric's steady breathing beside her was a reminder, even in the coldest winters, the smallest acts of grace can spark a thaw, and somewhere beyond the frost, beneath the weight of whispered tales, change waited patiently, like the slow turning of the seasons. The story was far from over. Winter's grip lingered stubbornly, but within the cold, Elowen found a quiet resilience beginning to kindle. Galen's presence was a gentle ember against the frost, never intrusive, yet steady, a warmth that settled in the spaces she had long thought hollow. Their interactions unfolded in soft gestures, a shared blanket over tired shoulders, the careful tending of Fenric's healing wounds, the slow, deliberate moments where silence spoke louder than words. Each act was a thread weaving them closer, binding two solitary souls in the midst of winter's chill. Isolde's scorn did not wane. If anything, it sharpened, slicing through the fragile peace with biting cruelty. Her barbs were laced with the cold certainty of entitlement. But beneath that frost lay a fractured, unspoken ache mirrored in her flickering eyes when she thought no one was watching. Town gossip swirled around her like bitter smoke. Whispers of jealousy and regret cloaked in gossip. Yet no one dared confront the pain festering beneath the surface. The tension mounted quietly. A taut wire stretched thin beneath snow's heavy silence. One evening, beneath a sky heavy with swirling clouds, the cruel dance broke into a sudden, violent crescendo. Isolde and her clique cornered Elowen near the edge of town, their laughter sharp and cruel as the winter wind. Fenric barked fiercely, his loyalty fierce and unyielding. But the teen's eyes gleamed with a merciless hunger for dominance. In a reckless moment, they seized Fenric, dragging him away into the thickening storm. Their footsteps swallowed by the swirling snow. Panic bloomed like wildfire in Elowen's chest, raw and desperate. Galen appeared then, moving with a silent precision, honed by years of discipline, his gaze steady and unwavering. The snow whipped around them, blurring the world into a frenzied dance of white and shadow. Footsteps thundered in the hush as Galen pursued the fleeing teens. Fenric's frightened yips, a beacon cutting through the storm's roar. The cold bit deep, but Galen's resolve was unshakable. Every movement a testament to the quiet strength beneath his calm exterior at last. Beneath the skeletal trees stripped bare by winter's grasp, the confrontation unfolded not with violence, but with a quiet authority that stilled the raging storm. Isolde's defiance cracked, her breath ragged and visible in the icy air, her eyes meeting Galen's with a mixture of fear and reluctant understanding. The power she wielded so cruelly was revealed as a fragile mask, and in that frozen clearing beneath the heavy sky, vulnerability flickered like a candle struggling against the wind. Galen knelt beside Fenric, his hand steady as he soothed the trembling dog, the softness in his touch a balm against the harshness they had endured. Elowen watched, a slow peace settling over her heart, a fragile promise whispered in the hush between falling snowflakes. The town's harsh judgment began to soften, threads of compassion weaving quietly through the cold fabric of gossip and scorn, as the storm abated and the stars emerged. Elowen and Galen found themselves beneath a sky softened by the first hints of dawn. Their eyes met in a lingering glance, heavy with unspoken words and tender understanding. The slow-burning connection between them deepened, not in grand declarations, but in the quiet. Language of presenza, shared warmth that neither time nor hardship could diminish. Fenric nestled close to Elowen's side as she whispered a promise to herself, a vow not to be defined by the cruelty of others, but by the quiet strength she nurtured within. The snow around them was no longer a cold barrier, but a glistening testament to survival and renewal. The town, once a place of whispered judgments, began to pulse with a new rhythm, one of tentative acceptance and the fragile blossoming of dignity in the tender silence that followed. Elon's voice, soft and sure, seemed to reach beyond the frozen world, a quiet invitation to anyone who had ever felt unseen or unheard, even in the coldest winters. Beneath the weight of whispered tales, there is grace waiting to be found. In small acts of courage, in silent resilience, we thaw the hardest of hearts and, perhaps, in time, find warmth enough to bloom. The story, like the seasons, was not finished. It was a journey marked by slow transformation, by the patient unfolding of hope beneath winter's fading breath. And as the light grew stronger, so too did the promise of new beginning, stories yet whispered, yet to be told. If this tale has touched your heart, whispered its quiet truth, please subscribe, and together we will uncover more stories woven from resilience, grace, and the enduring power of the human spirit.